Hi everybody, welcome. Fantastic, we've got rather a lot of people to get in tonight, so we're just going to wait in silence for a couple of minutes. Great, is everyone in, Nisha? Fantastic. Before we talk tonight, I'm going to invite Carolyn to open our space.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Sondo abonya karasiro, abonya gunyani, walukoni galaro keda, abonya ni swesi meltu. Abonya ni swesi meltu. Abonya ni swesi meltu. This is the river I have yearned for, the river that has known me, that has dreamed my lonely journey. This river sings me to her arms. This river sings us to her arms. This river sings us to her arms. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Carolyn. Welcome everybody to Embercombe online tonight. We're super delighted to have Carolyn Hillyer with us. She is a musician, as you've just found out, an author, a ceremonialist, an artist, and she lives in a very ancient place upon Dartmoor. She has the most gorgeous ceremonial roundhouse where she does work with women. I always think of her, when anyone ever mentions the indigenous tradition of the British Isles, it's always Carolyn that pops up into my mind as, for me, an embodiment of what our indigenous tradition is, whatever that means, just because it feels to me as though she really lives it. So I am hoping that we can discuss some of that tonight, and what we will do is talk for about 40 minutes. Then we will open the floor for live questions. What we are asking you to do, simply because there's so many of us, is if you have a question at the end, if you can click on the participants button at the bottom of the screen, there will be a raise hand button. So if you raise your hand, then we'll try to get to as many of you as possible. We're also going to be looking at the chat as we're going along. Nusha, who's hosting us tonight, will be looking out for questions on there. So if there's anything that occurs to you as we're going along, then please put it in there. I can't promise we'll get to those questions, but we will try to. So without further ado, Carolyn, welcome. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
What I'd love you to do, first of all, is just tell us a little bit about your work. I've probably done a really bad job of explaining it there, but if you could tell us about what you do up there on Dartmoor so beautifully.
Thank you. It's a great introduction. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And hello, everyone. It's really beautiful to be here this evening, and lots of familiar faces and lots of faces of people I don't know. So thank you for coming and being part of this evening. So I've been weaving lots of different threads together into my work over many decades. The painting, the music, singing, drumming, making drums, performing with drums, writing books, teaching workshops, especially for women, but for everyone, and traveling with the work, because the traveling has been part of the integrating it into our understanding of how we are as people on this planet, sharing different cultural contexts, and offering and receiving from different other indigenous cultures, so that all of the work is a constantly shifting parameters to it. But everything is informed by the land and by ancestry, by ancestral memory in the land. And that is why Dartmoor has been such a source, such a key for me. I've been able to feed all of that wild land energy into the work I've done, and I probably would not have done very much of it without that amazing support of the moor around, constantly bringing that wild energy into the work.
How does that work then, Carolyn? How do you feel that wild energy? How do you access it?
Well, I started off as a painter. I slipped into singing and music accidentally, really. I never intended that in my vision. It was always about painting, and it was about painting sacred landscape and sacred memory into the form of women's bodies. So I always painted women, but they're landscapes. Each woman was a landscape. And then I was singing to my women as I painted them, all life-size. So they were, very present with me, bit large, big boards I was painting on, singing to the women and singing the land into the women. And then, of course, the songs began to become part of it. And walking on the land is what informs the songs. Whenever I walk, I sing, actually, almost constantly singing in some way, and that feeds all the other work. So it feeds the memory that you're bringing up from the landscape, and it goes into the stories, it goes into the paintings, into the songs. So that treading and walking on the land is really important.
Do you feel as though there is kind of inherent wisdom actually in the land then? Is it something that's there that you're accessing, or is that something specific to you?
No, I absolutely do feel that. I don't see really how it cannot be like that, because the land that we walk on, the earth that we are part of, has been infused with so many people before us, beings, ancestors who are part of, they sit in the marrow of our bones, and they're coursing through our blood, and they're tapping on the drums of our skin. And so we are inevitably linking in with them, and that resonance that is held within the land when it's undisturbed, when you can, push through the veils of modern life, and you can get to a place where you can touch it in whatever small way it is. And that is a deep memory that belongs to us, belongs to all of us, wherever we are on the earth, that feels like home, like source, like something that feels familiar to us. We're being fed by those deep memories that are held within the stone and the soil itself, and in those ancient peat bogs, and in the mountains, and in the oceans, and all those places where we go to seek comfort and inspiration. Yes, I believe that our ancestor beings have left so many profound traces of themselves waiting for us to unlock them, discover them, remember them.
And you have a particular way of doing that. How do those of us that don't sing, that don't make music, how do we do it? Do you have any kind of thoughts on that?
Well, one of the really important aspects of the work over the last 3 decades has been working with the land that we live on here, in order to make it into a sanctuary for people to come and be able to touch into their own thresholds, or their own doorways, their own source, whatever it is that they're needing to find in their relationship with nature and with wild land. So we have been working over all of this time to bring the piece of land that we have the care of into that place. And obviously you at Embercombe, you know exactly what that's all about, because you've been doing it there for a long time as well. And so it feels that this isn't a particular thing that you can only access if you can sing, or you have a creative streak. It's there for all of us. It's a relationship that's just waiting to be gathered back into us. And I think simplicity is always the key, because the most intuitively responsive way that we link in with the land is the most authentic to us. And it can be incredibly simple. We don't need to carry with us as big ceremony or a particular way of manifesting our relationship. All of that is great too, but it can be incredibly simple, and that is where our authenticity lies, and are perhaps a key to how we can identify ourselves as indigenous within our own landscape. It lies in that authentic simplicity, because it's just us and the land, and see what happens. It doesn't have to be in a form.
Okay, so a lot of people talk about the indigenous tradition of the British Isles and how that's been lost, but you're what I love about what you do is that you're saying, well, it is current and it's accessible to all of us, and there are forms or places or things that can be done. Yeah, how do you feel about the ancestral kind of aspect of it?
Well, if you step past the immediate history, or the immediate hundreds of years of history, and move back into the deeper ancestral lines, if you start to get through the clutter and complexity and politics and oppression and all of those things that are inevitably part of our more recent ancestry, if you get back to something which is a raw relationship with the land, and then you're beginning to reconnect to a way of relating to the earth which is shared by so many of us all around the planet. And I think that first time I came to Embercombe, which I don't know how many years ago that was, Rachel, was it about 4 years ago maybe? I'm not sure of the time, but I think was it for that ceremony that Pat McCabe came for? I remember it vividly. Yes, yeah. So it was a really interesting day for me. It's the first time I ever taught the Proto-Celtic language to anyone, and I think there were about 200, 300 women there, something like this. And I had a sense that if we were going to meet all of those sisters coming from all of those cultures and landscapes, if we were going to meet them eye to eye, heart to heart, with our back straight and holding out the fullness of our land, we needed to find a way of doing that wasn't weighed down by the political resonances and the historical resonances and weights and burdens that are in our contemporary language. So by slipping into a different headspace with that, and a heart space with that, we could maybe be able to meet them as sister to sister in the way that it felt important. And in that sense, it feels like connecting into our ancestry is a way of really understanding how we are as people around the whole planet. How, going into that raw original relationship and bringing what is useful from that into our own paths now, our shared paths now. I don't know how we do it without feeling connected and belonging. I don't know how we look after the planet or participate in caring for the planet if we don't have a sense of our own belonging. So it's really important for us to dig around and find out what that is for us.
And just to give a bit of background on that then, for those that weren't there or didn't know about this event, about 4 years ago at Embercombe and other places actually, particularly around Dartmoor and the Devon area, a group of about 8 indigenous elders came from different countries around the world to share stories. And Carolyn came to Embercombe as the kind of indigenous elder of our area, and what she's talking about is the story and the way that they were met, the welcoming ceremony that we gave for them. So it was immensely beautiful and powerful. And I just remember you striding across the stone circle at Embercombe, Carolyn, on the day that they came. It was, and I think they felt immensely welcomed by something that we could offer from our place as well. So yeah, it was gorgeous. I'm really interested in you saying a little bit more about the Proto-Celtic language that you've been researching and using then, because it feels as though that's a way of us connecting back to this very deep ancestral line then.
Well, we've been, myself and my partner have been working with the most ancient memory within this part of Dartmoor that we can touch into, which is the Neolithic and the Bronze Age. We've been doing that for, since we came here nearly 30 years ago. And it's fed so much of the work that we've done. Just as a, I will come back to answer your question, but as a slight side to that, we then wanted to move into a deeper memory layer in the landscape here. And in order to do that, we needed to move into ice, into a landscape of ice, because of course that's how we experienced this part of the planet during the really ancient ancestral time. I'll come back to that in a bit, that part of it. But during that initial process, we knew we needed to create a ceremony house on our land here. So we built a roundhouse that is from granite and oak and thatch from straw. And that roundhouse was the beginning, really, of being able to make what felt to us like a full offering to the ancestor people here. And in the offering, we were able to receive. So it's like you have to make your big offering, you have to make your place for the ancestors to land at your hearth, and then you can start to work with them. So we did that nearly about 20 years ago. And so rooting it into that Neolithic Bronze Age moment in time when our landscape was being turned into a ritual landscape, actually. All the prayers that we still see so richly around on these islands, created during those periods of time by our ancestors. So during all of that time since then, I've been wanting to anchor all of that work into language, into words, and I've experimented over the years with different forms of that. And then, to my absolute wonder and amazement and awe, I finally stumbled across Proto-Celtic language about 5-6 years ago. I hadn't been familiar with it at all before, but I began to dig around. I found little dusty lexicons around online, and then gradually began to piece together a way of working with it. And I think it's really exciting because it's a bone language. It's not a living spoken language. It's the mother tongue that fed into all the many different Celtic languages that are still very vibrant, most of them that's still very vibrant today. But this is a mother tongue that is a generation of peoples before the Celtic languages emerged. And it's been linguistically pieced together, really, over a long period of study, over 100 years or more. And you have these amazing words that are so ancient and that have travelled from Central Europe and all through the north and west of Europe to come to these islands. These are words that our people were speaking during this moment in time. And there's a lot of imagery in the words which really makes you adjust your thinking about the landscape and about how people were interacting with the landscape. And I do have one little excerpt of something I've just written about this, because I'm actually writing an adaptive lexicon at the moment so that it can be as accessible as I can manage to make it for people. Are you okay if I just read out this little paragraph?
Fantastic, please do, yes.
So I've just written this. Why is this ancestral language significant or even relevant to us in our now existing world? Because this ancient mother tongue offers us a new way of describing our sacred relationship with the soul of our world. It presents us with a channel of communication that's not hemmed in by contemporary cultural parameters or the accumulated burdens of history and politics that weigh down our modern language. When we use ancient language to express our deepest, truest, most raw relationship with a wild place, a landscape, a piece of the earth, then we begin to recognize and to unravel our intangible yearning for home and to connect with our own indigeny. We feel that we belong. And when we know that we belong, we also know how to celebrate and honor the natural world of which we're a part. And we come to understand more profoundly our responsibilities towards it. And when we realize the truth and magnitude of those responsibilities, we know we must work together to meet them. And when we all meet our responsibilities as human people, indigenous to this earth, then we stand some chance of soothing and mending, healing and protecting what we as a species have broken. And I've just ended with this. Yes, I do seem to be suggesting that singing and praying in the Proto-Celtic language can contribute to the vast global movement of hopeful and courageous human people who are committed and determined to preserve the precious integrity of life on this planet. So I don't want to overstate it, but that's kind of how I feel about it.
I've just got an image of you actually going out on the land and singing this language to it, almost kind of in a reciprocal kind of giving back to the ancestors, giving back to the land, actually saying, actually, we haven't forgotten, we're still here. That's how it feels like to hear you saying that. We've got a question from Hannah here, and this is a question that often comes up when we talk about the indigeny of the British Isles. Does one need to be a direct descendant of ancestors from a particular place to feel an ancestral connection to the land?
I don't feel that's the case. I wasn't born on Dartmoor, and I didn't come here till much later in my life, but I absolutely feel that I've rooted my bones into it. And going back to the language, or going back to the way that we can peel back all the layers to get to a raw, authentic relationship with the land, I think that's all that it takes. It's where you feel that you're connected and where you're willing to respect and honor the land. And you know, the planet belongs to all of us, and we need to find our place within it, because that's the only way that we can be truly useful to each other and to the world. So no, I think it's where it feels that you are able to unlock your own connection.
Do you think, I'd be interested to know why Dartmoor feels so potent for you. I mean, yeah, you suit the landscape, Carolyn, you know, what's drawn you particularly to there?
Well, it was a long coming here. I came here, I became acquainted with it as a child, and then I reacquainted with it when I was a student, not far from here, in my teens. But then it was a long detour while it worked away at me. And I think it was some years when I was still a young woman, I came up here and made a commitment that I would find a way of getting myself back here. So it just took a long time, but then when I did, I got here, and that was it. I wasn't going to go anywhere else, really. So yeah, it was just it simmered away. It simmered away for a long time until I had listened to it sufficiently to find out how I could make it be my reality to be here.
And do you think there's something particular about it that calls to you? Is it an ancient memory, or what do you think it is that calls to you?
I find it an extraordinary place in terms of its, although it's a very manufactured landscape in many ways, because it's obviously been filled with sheep and tin mines and people's various habitations over the years, but it's a relatively undisturbed land. The veil here is very thin, and I'm sure all of you here this evening know places like that, where you go there and you feel that human presence is light, and in the lightness of the human presence you're able to reach through to something else. And that's definitely how I experience them all. But obviously there are many places that have that, and we just need to reach out and find the ones that resonate with us.
Okay, I'd love to go back to the language. Sorry, I'm dotting around now, Carolyn, but I'd love to go back to the language. Ali asked a little while ago whether we might be able to hear some of those words, whether there are particularly potent words that you could share with us. You said something about dusty lexicons a while ago, which sounded beautiful, but is there any of those that you can share with us?
Well, the amazing thing about this language is that you can find really important connections in there. I've been looking at it for 5-6 years now, but I only just found out or realized, because of the way that I've been moving the words around, I only just realized that the word for woman is the same as the word for needle. And I thought that was incredible, because there was something about the power and the significance of the skill that enabled that word to become brought into one sense of something. And also there are words in there for the dusty lexicon people translate them as wizard, but we know that they're the words for shaman. We have our own word for shaman. We have our word for shaman woman, and we have our word for shaman man, and they are from our own landscape, and they're really special words. And I think as you dive into the language and begin to taste the words in your mouth, you understand the meanings behind the meanings that have been given in the academic circles. You have to sort of just have a sense of peeling things back to their hearts, you know.
Are you able to share those words, the one for shaman and the one for woman?
I'll tell you some words, actually. I'll give you some words here. So this is a really important word, wala. It's very simple, W-A-L-A, wala, and it means power. It's our inner power and our external power, and it feels like it's a key to a lot of things. So there is this line, wala nis an wirjanja, that's power to our tender truth. And I like that sense of being able to bring the words together so you can really refine their meaning. I should say actually that when I'm creating songs or stories with this language, I don't worry about tenses, plurals, any linguistic niceties. I just dispense with all of that. I treat it as if I'm beading a necklace. So I take a word that has a particular meaning and I join it with another word, has another meaning, and joined together, they become something else. So it's like making a necklace, and it's a very liberating way of doing it. And I'm hoping that when I've completed this lexicon that I'm kind of working on at the moment, that other people will have the opportunity to do that, because I think it will create something that's very alive again. It will, for each person who works with it, they'll create new meanings and new combinations of words and new ways of expressing what they need it to be.
Where can people find this, Carolyn? Have you got it on your website at all? Your translations?
No, but it will be. I'm really racing on with it now, because it feels like there's people have been very hungry for this. And I suppose the best way I describe it is I've been roaming around in the corners, lingering in the corners of old, academic offices in a digital way, finding things like books that never were digital. So somebody lovingly has photocopied the whole book and put it up online. And if you trawl through 500 pages, you'll find another whole set of Proto-Celtic words. So it's that kind of exploratory, retrieving them from the dusty shelves and bringing them into something that feels like it's alive. So the words are really waiting to be awoken. That's what I feel. And that is the work of the moment. And I'm hoping it will be ready before Christmas, actually. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Wow. To have an excuse to go into dusty corners of academic places. Wow, I'm super jealous. Nusha's just put your website up in the chat. So if everyone keeps an eye on there for the work. So that's the work of the moment. What else are you doing at the moment, Carolyn? So we are in this strange moment, you know, of kind of
moment indeed. So
yeah.
well, obviously concerts and workshops got put on hold or postponed or shifted into new forms. So it's been like for all of you, it's been a moment of reflection and recalibrating, really. So I'm doing lots of writing. I've got 3 books on the go actually, but that's a good opportunity to do that. But the hunger for music is very strong. And we were actually planning to be with you at Embercombe next week to do a concert, which we've unfortunately needed to postpone again. But it feels like we are all poised as we go into next year with this pent up desire to celebrate and share music with each other. And certainly as musicians, we're planning to really go for it next year. So we're working on new music as well, so that we can really make the most of the new momentum when we all are finally shifted into a new bit of life here.
So just to say that the concert that you were going to do at this weekend coming, wasn't it? Was called This Remembered Earth, and it was for survival. It was a fundraiser, and we will hopefully do that sometime next year. So we'll fingers crossed for that. How do you feel about this moment in time then, kind of more generally? You know, I've heard a lot of people saying, you know, that it's quite a potent moment, you know, that it feels like the veil is particularly thin at this moment in time. Do you have that feeling at all? Well,
I think like everyone else, I probably move between extremes of feeling the potential of us all being able to reset our approach to everything, and then getting caught in the swirl of the realities of, you know, people being ill and just, you know, bereavements and all the things that each of us have been surrounded by. So I wouldn't say that I have been ploughing a very straight furrow this year. I don't know if many people have. We work a lot with my women's groups with the energy of salmon, which is very purposeful, especially at this point in the year when you have the sense of the imagery of returning up through the hills to the hill streams, you know, this sense of salmon coming back into the hills. But actually we've definitely been flounders, not salmon this year. There's been very little sense of the powerful purpose, but just a hanging in there and allowing the waters to carry us. That's very much been what it has been for me. Although I think the autumn has changed that. There's a sense of, although we are obviously moving into another wave of practical difficulty, the autumn is bringing an extra level of momentum, and I'm noticing it from what other people are sharing as well, that we will be able to grip hold of threads again a little bit more, be able to start reweaving in the way that we've been maybe trying to do for a while.
Reweaving, absolutely. I want to move to some questions. I wonder if we could, Meg, you had one. I wonder if Meg could be unmuted, Nusha. Meg, if you're there. Hello. Meg had a question about urban places. So we've talked, I mean, obviously both you and we at Embercombe are in a very rural place where it's easy to feel this kind of deep connection. For those in rural places, urban places, what do you think can be done? I mean, presumably underneath everything, there is still this possibility. Have you got any kind of...
Yeah, well, that's when I think we can rely on the wild gifts of the land. And I actually have a prop in my hand to share
Fabulous.
with you. And I'm actually going to refer at this point to my sisters in Moscow, because I work with quite an extensive group of women in Russia. I have been doing that for a long time. And the situation in Russia is that people's living accommodation is generally pretty urban and very small and multiply shared. So privacy is quite, you know, for most families, most people, is at a premium. And yet those women, when they come to Dartmoor, they are on it in terms of seeking out the wild gifts of nature, which they can use as a vessel to carry back everything that they experience when they're away from their urban situation. And one of the things that they take particular delight in is bones. I'm just going to hold this one. Oh, that's quite close. Let's bring it back in. So this is actually red deer leg bone. I take them out on the more wild bone hunting, because, you know, if you know Dartmoor, there's a lot of wild death, and then it's cleaned by the weather, and we go out looking for the bones, and each one of these bones is so precious to the women who find them, and they can take them back and encapsulate their journey within it. This bone actually has a story. It's not from Dartmoor, but it's connected with the land here. I found a dying ground, a death ground in a forest in a remote valley in the mountains of the West Highlands in Scotland last autumn, this time last year. Just came across it by chance, really. And there were the remains of 10 deer there, and they'd obviously all died together, and they died slowly. And I imagine they had been trapped by snow during the heart of the winter. And some of them, there were little skeletons curled within bigger skeletons. It was quite an extraordinary thing to find. So I stayed there with those bones for about 3 days, and I created a prayer shrine, a mandala really, with the bones, gathering them all up from where they were in the forest. And I went back just 2 weeks ago and found what was left, and this was one of the bones that was still there. So this came back to be connected here to this land. So what I suppose the point of what I'm saying about the bones is that it doesn't have to be bones, it can be any part, it can be a stone. We all pick up stones. I find these things which are deep infusions of the memory of the landscape, or the sense of wildness or time that we experienced in a dream space, those kinds of things. So that would be it. That would be my answer, that in an urban situation, you can bring all of that wildness and all of that deep connection, even just with a very small pebble. Bring it into your place, into your home, and draw on it from there.
I know you also make musical instruments, Carolyn. You and Nigel kind of taking things off the land and making musical instruments with them, drums. And could you say a little bit about that? I was always taken with this idea of making music with the land, from the things that you found on the land. I think that's gorgeous.
Yeah, that's been a very important part of what we've been doing for about 15, 20 years, something like this. And I make drums. Nigel, my partner, makes flutes using the wood from Dartmoor. And I make drums using the skins from Dartmoor red deer. We ran a project for a little while using Dartmoor wild pony skins as a part of a way of honouring the quite precarious situation that the herds are in here. I don't do that project at the moment. And also because of the travels to the Arctic, working with other drum makers there, I used to make also with reindeer skin to catch some of the energy of those cold landscapes. And I got this one here to show you because it's the very smallest drum I've ever made. And this is salmon skin. It's the little salmon skin drum. Can you see the scales on it? The scales have stayed on the drum even through the whole process of making it, and it's very tiny. You know, it's just next to my head. It's a little drum, and I made this as part of an exhibition with an Arctic woman drum maker in northern Sweden. We did a couple of years ago an exhibition of women's drums, sacred drums, at a Sami museum in the Arctic there, and I made a drum. This drum was part of 3 drums that came out of one fish. So everything that was in that fish we turned into ceremony. So every part of the fish was parcelled up and shared with lots of people for eating of it. I made 3 drums, and then I used the bones to create other things as part of the exhibition. So yeah, I'm very fond of this little drum, and you play it just with your fingernails, your finger, you don't beat it, you tap it. It's the whisper of the land, the whisper of the salmon returning.
Wow. So when you play it, do you call on the spirit of the salmon specifically then?
Yeah. That's kind of what it's for. It's a good job for that, just tapping it by the side of the stream.
We're getting a lot of people saying, could they hear a bit more of the sound of it?
Yeah, the only thing is with this, I will try it, but I have, maybe you have a better experience of this than me, but I have tried with Zoom sometimes doing just drumming, and it cuts out the sound because it's considered to be a background sound. So, but I'll try it and you let me know if you can hear it, okay? Are you hearing that okay, Rach?
A little bit, yes. I can see what you mean.
Maybe if I talk while I'm tapping, you'll hear it better.
That's better.
You hear
That's
it now.
better.
So
Yes,
if I keep on,
yeah.
and you can also run your finger around it, and you get this really beautiful, and it's really strong for fish skin. It's incredible strength to it.
Wow, salmon noises. Before we open the floor, because I will do, I'll open the floor in just 1 minute. Can you just, you've mentioned a couple of times your work in other countries, you know, and I know that you kind of travel quite widely in some months. Could you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, that's been a really important part of the experience of it all, really. And the place I'd really like to talk about is the Arctic, because I started going there in 2004, originally to the Sami areas of northern Sweden to play at reindeer herding festivals. And then we gradually kept moving east until we got into Russia, a much more complex way of traveling. But then finally being able to reach that northern edge of Arctic Siberia, and have been there a few times working with Nenets, friends of ours who are singers and musicians and ritualists on the tundra. And that has been hugely significant to so much of the work I've been doing, to be able to go and be in that landscape and learn from that landscape, overwhelming in its magnitude, in the gift that it's given me in my own work. But also being there in 2013 on the tundra, the first year that particular, those particular peoples were really being affected by climate change. And that was the first year that they were expressing their deep fear and loss, and their lack of understanding of what was happening, because there was no generational memory of what the ice and snow were doing. And you probably do know this already, but during that time, and it's been happening ever since, the tundra, the temperatures were too high for the snow to form a proper layer. It formed a layer of thick ice instead, and so the reindeer couldn't feed. And so the tundra, when we were there, was literally scattered with thousands of bodies of dead reindeer that were too thin to be eaten by the people. And even the reindeer who were surviving were very thin, and they have a 1,000-mile migration to make, and they were worrying that they could even achieve that migration. So that was the beginning for me of witnessing on the edge how quickly it was moving for them. And of course, we all know how fast that's been happening since then. And so that I feel that the most important thing that we can be doing, all of us, is just keep sharing those stories about the Arctic. The people that we visited there, that we were working with, say that they're very cut off from being able to get their story out. Certainly organizations like Survival can't reach them. They can't go there into those restricted areas of Russia. So they just want the story told of how fast it's changing and how their culture is being strangled, really, by what's happening. You know, the political things, of course, and the oil companies and all those things they contend with, but how quickly it's being strangled by the climate shifts. And just wanted to make sure that they're honoured by my mentioning that tonight.
Thank you. And I'm guessing you say survivor can't reach them, but I see you doing kind of fundraising activities as well. So yeah. I am going to open up for questions now. Let's have a look. If you would like to ask a question, could you raise your hand electronically? I don't know whether we've got any of those raised.
Yeah, we've got Lily. Would you unmute yourself, please?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Hi,
Lily.
Hi.
Hi, actually Fanny, this is Lily. Hi Carolyn, hi everyone.
Hi.
My question is that I'm kind of just beginning on this path of listening to the land and making songs and stories. It feels like a very internal practice, and I'm really wanting to bring it out to the world and kind of take a step out to the world with it, and I really don't know how. I wonder if you have any advice for your younger self or me or people who are kind of just starting this.
Yeah, well, if I go right back to where when I was beginning this first steps on this journey in my early 20s, it was being with other people, especially women, who were doing that at the same time, and we unlocked it together. We unfolded the journey together, and we found courage and adventures because we were sharing it, and it enabled me to do things I probably wouldn't have thought of doing on my own. And now I look at those experiences with those other, sisters of mine, some of whom I still, carry with me as friends all these years later. They were so enwildening. They made me wild, and they made me learn to understand that the process of being wise takes a very long time. So not to rush it, but to just take every moment on the way and feed all of it in, not to discount any part of it, because who knows what bit is going to be the next key. Yeah, I'd say that as well. Allow yourself to be really surprised. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Great. Nusha, can you choose the next one?
Well, we had a message from Anita. She was just interested in knowing if there was any live music from Dartmoor coming up.
Well, we are clinging on to 2 concerts in December, and the venues are absolutely determined that they're going to go ahead. And one is the Assembly Rooms in Glastonbury, and one is on the edge of Dartmoor at an arts centre on the west side of Dartmoor. So we'll have those on our website, and we have been doing live stream concerts all year, and we are planning more of those over the winter. So if you wanted to dip into some of the things that we've been doing, we did them all around the land. So we did a concert in the Haymeadow and a concert in the Roundhouse, and you can find them on our YouTube channel. So just look under Seventh Wave Music, or actually it's under Nigel's name, Nigel Shaw. You'll find it, or you'll find links on our website. And we've got quite a few of those live stream concerts there if you want to catch up with those. But next year, hopefully a lot more as well.
Fantastic. I'm seeing that Sarah has got her hand raised.
Hi, Sarah.
Sarah,
Hi.
can you? Brilliant.
Hi, thank you, Rachel. Hi, Carolyn. We've never met, but we have spoken a few times. Yeah, I had a question about Proto-Celtic. I live up in Scotland, and I've been following what's unfolding in Orkney with all the different excavations. And I first went there about 30 years ago and was always struck by just how much there was in the ceremonial landscape in terms of the, the cairns and the chambered tombs. And I've been investigating what's left of that, because it must have been around here. And of course, there's tons around Edinburgh. All the hills around here have hill forts and souterrains and what have you. I mean, there's even a standing stone about half a mile from me in the middle of the city. And it's huge. It's like 3 meters, and it's got cup marks all over the back of it. And it's, it's in such a suburban setting, you wouldn't believe it. But my question is really about the different, because here I get the impression that the history of peopling on the land has gone back thousands and thousands of years. I mean, right up until when the ice basically left. And so I'm wondering what your experience of using Proto-Indo-European has been, because I think that's the mother tongue to Proto-Celtic,
yes.
isn't it?
Wow.
And I think Proto-Celtic may have diverged somewhere around, what was it, 3000, 2000 BC, and yet some of the ages of things that are coming out of Orkney are like 11,000.
Yes, yes.
So I'm really intrigued as to what words would have been spoken and sung on the land in that huge chunk of time.
Yeah, yes, and of course there's mother languages that fed into the Proto-Celtic. Wow, we've got many lifetimes of study on this, I think, to uncover all of this. And who knows that in the Proto-Celtic lexicon, which of those words maybe have been carried through from all those previous generations of language. It's hard to say with your linguistic mind, but it's a sense of feeling some of them, like some of the words just feel like we've spoken them for a long time. I don't have experience of the Proto-Indo-European language at all, but I'm really interested to know if you've been uncovering, and of course there would be all the more contemporary Viking languages that would have come and sat on top of those languages, and maybe you're gathering up of moving back into ancient language. The process of that in the north would be a different set of baskets you'd be drawing from, I suppose. Would that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. There's, you've got that kind of very Norse influence all the way down the west coast, the ancient Dartmoor kingdom. And I mean, I just found out just a couple of days ago that here in Edinburgh, we would never have spoken Gaelic or Gaelic. It was only ever a Brythonic Celtic language, so similar to Cumbric or even Old English, which was a bit of a surprise. But I was like, oh no, it's so complicated, all these different influences coming in and leaving their marks on the land and the language and then moving on out again. But thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Great. Well, we only have a few minutes left, and I'd love you to do a closing for us in a couple of minutes, Carolyn. But I wonder, is there anything you can kind of say to us as a collective then here? Is there anything, when we step outside tomorrow morning, is there anything that you can, I'm not asking for advice, but is there anything that you would say to us right now in this moment as being an important thing to do?
I think putting ourselves in the context of vast oceans of time really helps us deal with everything that we're coping with now, because this is just a small moment in time. It feels huge and significant, and for every person who's bereaved, it's massively significant. And for every person who's lost so much of their, the shape of their life, their daily life, it's massively significant. But in the context of everything that has been held by our earth over all this time, it's part of the journey, and we are in this part of the journey. So I guess that sounds a bit trite maybe, and maybe it doesn't even feel like a very original thought, but I think optimism in its deepest form, a sense of our own power that we keep carrying through all of these times. And I do feel actually I'm probably better off answering that with this final song, because I think that the things that I am mentioning in that are the things that feel like they're most important for us to hold on to. So could I sing that and then share the final prayer? Would that be okay?
That would be wonderful. And I think what I would love to do as well, Carolyn, is at this moment say thank you so much to you for kind of being game and coming on tonight. It's always a pleasure, so hopefully we'll do it again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank
and
you,
also,
Nisha, for keeping an eye on everything. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Nisha and Cindy, who's also hosting us, but also thank you to everybody who came tonight. And yeah, you can find this talk on our Facebook channel if you want to see it again, and we'll be posting some of the chat and resources on our website. So thank you. And we'll ask Carolyn then to lead us out, and at the end of that we'll close the session. So
Okay.
thank you, everybody.
Rachel, thank you. So I'm going to sing this song in English first, then the Proto-Celtic, because this is my answer to Rachel's question. And then right at the end, it's very short, and then right at the end I'd like to share one last chant with you in Proto-Celtic that we'll do as a response, and you sing it as well, but you'll keep muted, otherwise we'll have chaos. But if you just sing it with me, so I'll sing a line and then you sing the line, I'll repeat it and you sing with me, so it'll be just you and me singing together, and you'll feel the Proto-Celtic in your mouth and you'll remember those words. It's very simple, but I'll sing this other one first. Power to our tender truth, power to our courage, power to our gleaming hearts, power to our wildest dreams, power to our truth. Wala nisan wirjanja, wala nisan druto, wala niskanya glaino, wala nisan weltruna, wala nisan will. Power to our truth, wala nisan will. And this is the one I'm going to share and sing with you. And the words mean this: sacred grandmothers, sacred bones, sacred breath of life, sacred earth, sacred blood. Okay, so I'll sing a line and then we'll sing it together. Noi bonani, noi bonani, noi bonani, noi bonani. Askono kajo, askono kajo, biwo kajo, biwo kajo, dijira kajo, dijira kajo, kruasa kajo, kruasa kajo, noi bonani, noi bonani, noi bonani, noi bonani, noi bonani, noi bonani, askono kajo, biwo kajo, dijira kajo, kruasa kajo, noi bonani.